How's it going, gang? This is Christoph from Techware Labs. We're going to be reviewing the PowerColor Red Devil RX570. We're going to go through some benchmarking, both realistic and your maximization benchmarks. But first, we're going to go through some actual technical specifications straight from the websites. First, Radeon, then we're going to see what PowerColor has actually added to the mix, and basically we'll go ahead and get started with the technical details. Take a look at our specs just for our card itself, the Radeon chip. So we've got some comparisons at the top, a few scorecards kept by Radeon themselves on a few of the more popular games. As we scroll down, we're going to start seeing more details. Of course, this is all going to be picked from the website, so all the information is accurate, but I wanted to make sure it's available just so you can see. Now, our requirements for the board is 150 with 450 PSU. You have to consider that it is a low power unit and it's very efficient, so it actually works very well on low power constraints. However, the better the power supply, the better the actual performance. So higher frame rates, more power efficiency. There are some features involved with Radeon themselves. I'm using mostly Relive on the Radeon software, and that helps me record all the possible videos I've put on this video without crazy lag in between. We have to consider that third-party software in many cases will bypass or overlay a camera, while the Radeon Relive will actually take from directly the driver all its resources and all the images. So you don't have to worry too much about an overlay taking up a lot of space. With that, they do have a lot of other features involved, so there's plenty of different things you can do with your cards and plenty of support. To anyone familiar with Radeon, this is a Radeon RX series. It is a derivative of, or at least for PowerColor's behalf, it is a next gen with its Red Dragon line, so they do use Radeon 470 on those. So you can consider that they are upgrading the internals as well as adding their own spin to the mix. So in this case, you are using a better Radeon chipset. You're also using a better manufactured device in comparison to the Dragon. However, most of the specs will be somewhat similar. There are a few extras, like about a 4% increase in the clock speed. There was also a 11% decrease in units processed, but many times when you have a faster processor or faster clock time, you don't have to worry too much about how many things you can do at once, especially when they do it much faster. Now, of course, you can have support for this card on just about all platforms, except, of course, OS X. They're never going to get anything outside of what they have. So you're looking at any Windows-based device. You can even work with Linux, and especially with Steam's integration into Linux as of recent, much more reason to go with a card like this. Much more stable. Linux systems do have a tendency to be not so compatible with most cards. However, AMD has done a great job with keeping up with Linux-based systems. So it is always a good idea if you have a Linux system, and definitely recommended for the Red Devil to be a part of your list. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at competitor real quick. This is the MSI. It's a Radeon RX570 as well, and the specs are the same. You can tell already that some of the features are lacking on the actual card. You'll notice when we go into the next section, we'll get some details on the features that PowerColor added to the card to improve the performance, while this MSI looks a bit bare-boned. So let's go ahead and take more detail. So on top of the basic specs that we see here, we've been talking about, we're going to go into more detail about what is inside that is specifically PowerColor. They have tuned it to a gaming style card with some neat features, including of course overclocking. Now, the case in itself is basically a metallic substance. It helps very well with keeping the device safe from everything, electrostatic to heat dispersal, and it's very stylish, as you can see in the pictures that are posted on the official review. Now, the actual device is very, very, very comfortable. I'm very comfortable moving it around from PC to PC as I see fit without any worries of bending something or touching something that I shouldn't be touching. So here you'll see that we have a double bearing fan, and the blades themselves are kind of detailed into a double bladed design. Now this is more of a geometric feature, and it boasts that it is a dust-free design, meaning that the way the air travels through those fans does not let any dust actually sit on the fan, which so far it's worked pretty well. I have not noticed any collection, while the rest of the board might gather a few bits of dust for the short period that I've used it. The fans themselves don't necessarily have anything on them, which is actually very surprising. Now, the double bearing design on this will extend the life by quite a long time. You have to make sure this is the case if you're overclocking. So as you overclock, you always have to be cautious of what the maximum potential of those fans are. Now, having a more durable fan, of course, means a longer lasting card. So on top of the actual air control, we've got power management on the inside. The circuits and modules, phasers particularly, in a multi-phase system that synchronize the timing and the cleanliness of those specific input signals. What does this mean? Well, this means that the hardware is not hiccuping at any point. Now, a hiccup doesn't necessarily mean that the whole computer goes down. Sometimes there's small, tiny hiccups inside of the actual signal, which could let a module essentially stop working for a split second while the card or any other device goes through its particular fail-safe sequence to restore order. In this case scenario, it stops it from the very beginning. It prevents the signal from ever getting to that horrible effect. This is one of the powers of power supplies. Having an efficient power supply gives you the ability to maintain a healthy system and making sure that components are working properly and have the longest possible lifespan. Now remember, I did mention there was a lot of efficiency-packed features on this card. One thing we have to now consider is through that power we have to have a stable input, which is a simple little gateway. However, it does a lot in coordination with the other internal components. One of the really cool things I found about this is that there's an actual physical switch that you can turn at any point in time to go between silent and overclock mode. Now here's a comparison on the NVIDIA spectrum. As far as what they have on the market, the 1050 Ti is the closest in comparison, and it's still ranged below the RX460 of the previous model for the Radeon. So the actual comparison here is null, but you can tell that just based on the architecture, you are going to get a single fan on this particular EVGA. However, you're also going to get less performance, including the 128-bit memory bus. So there's a bottleneck for you. Cool. Now that we're done with all the tech jargon, let's go ahead and go into the actual real-time play. We're going to see some live recorded video streams of a Starcraft game, a Overwatch game, and a League of Legends game. Now the Starcraft one is an actual test on maximum rendering per unit, since Starcraft is a real-time strategy and you are able to have high graphics per one unit with a substance of about 200 units per player, and when you couple that with about 8 players per match, you've got yourself a good 1600 little rendered fully functional human beings and aliens and whatever. So we're going to test the limitations on how many can be rendered at once. Then we're going to go ahead and test the ultra settings both on Overwatch and League of Legends, and from there we're going to get a good little view at some cool little gameplay. Alright, so here we can see the StarCraft game in itself. It is an RTS real-time strategy, and the main concept, for those not aware, is that you build bases and manufacture units and conduct armies. Now, this is an organic user, and look at all the particular materials being rendered correctly, very smoothly, and very organically. So imagine this on a greater scale. Let's check it out. Alright, so that was just a little hint of the detail that is involved in StarCraft. Now let's go ahead and see where the limitations of the card are. How many units do I need to overload this rendering? Alright, so here we're gonna see some starting gameplay to an SC online game, Starcraft. And take notice of the small hiccups, but keep track of all the specific particles available. Think about the minerals being themselves a part of the objects in this space. Notice as the camera moves around the level, sometimes you see it jag or kind of stutter. In the beginning level, you won't really see much issue with the game. And honestly, you won't see much issue with a small number of players, so like a 2 versus 2. But in this 3 versus 3 map, you're gonna see some end game hiccups. Alright, so now let's take a look at some more detail on the graphical input when we have large armies on the battlefield. That's not too bad. Now most of us won't really play StarCraft on such a high level, but it's really nice to see. Now the next more controlled step is we're going to take a look at a unit preloader map on StarCraft. And what essentially this map does is load every single possible unit in the game on a single surface, a pretty decent sized map, and you have to consider that everything is visible. So everything is being managed and orientated by the graphics card, not just the things that we see on the screen. Now the map, it says that there's going to be guaranteed lag, so that's always the case, but we notice that it's pretty efficient on the lowest of the lowest graphical settings, but we do have a lot of stutter as soon as we move into even the medium side. Let's take a look. Now this mode here is in low mode, so essentially the lowest possible graphical interfacing detail. It's gonna be very smooth in most cases, and remember there should be lag in this as well if it was a system using this mode to its main visual appeal. Now other graphical systems in higher modes obviously have graphical cards. So let's take a look at medium settings. This is where this card particularly does well. So this is actually going to be a laggy sequence, at least to its minimum. You will still see smoothness in most cases, but this is essentially where the card does peak at for normal functionality. So for the lulz, we're going to basically try out the high mode on StarCraft and see how that works out. You can notice it's not very smooth at all. This is to take note the place where the card will peak its highest temperatures and utilization, so it's not very smart to play within this mode if you do not have proper circulation of fans in your case system. So here it is. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive straight into those official benchmarks from Superposition, the Unigine Corp. So let's go ahead and check that. Alright, now that we're done with all the benchmarking with Starcraft and Superposition, let's go ahead and take a look at some Overwatch videos. These are just little, I don't know, highlights, replays, things I liked during gameplay. They were pretty cool, especially ones that would take a lot of processing to complete any sort of mass gathering or extremely quick gameplay. So, enjoy. Alright, so if you've made it to this point, you are a gamer, and the next step for serious gamers, we're gonna go into some League of Legends, see how it looks on high graphics, and enjoy a really good game. Now, it's not gonna be a lot of detail or a lot of the game. I simply got a little bit of the setup sped up with some cuts in between, and then final 4 minutes of the game for your enjoyment. Have fun. Good game.
guide you, even now.
Executed. Triple kill.
3.
Double kill. Double kill. Red team's turret has been destroyed.
So that's it, guys. That's all I got for the Red Devil RX570. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you've got any further any further requests, we are taking requests. Just to let you know, you got some device you're interested in buying, but you're not sure if you want to, let us know. We'll get in contact. We'll pull the strings. So as always, Christoph, Techware Labs. Talk to you guys later.